So this guy here, this guy's name is Jon Alpert, and he's a documentarian. Now, he used to work at NBC News. And I don't know exactly when they did this interview, but Case Study found it. So this guy,
shout out to him. Shout out to Case Study.
Case Study gets a lot of good stuff. So, but this was interesting because it just shows you the mentality of the corporate news around war and why we have so much of it. Let's watch.
We had to define.
Now, this is the first he was working at NBC. He had to go into Iraq. This was in 1991 for the first war, or Gulf War. No, Gulf War Classic. Old school.
The Iraqi restrictions, when we got to Iraq in the middle of the war, it was obvious that this was not the bloodless war that was being shown to us on American television. Back in those days, the generals would go on TV and they would show the cameras from the jet planes hitting bridges. And one of the reporters asked if there were any planes that missed the target. 100% accuracy. And they also asked them about civilian deaths and collateral damage. And our military claimed that this was a bloodless war. And I don't know whether you guys have been to wars, but I've been to a lot of wars, and there's no such thing. And it's very, very important that the American people understand what happens when we apply our military power around the world. We have to know this because we're a big, strong, and potentially dangerous nation. And so in the middle of the war, I went to Iraq. And when you arrive in Iraq, you're presented with 3 pages of restrictions that you're supposed to follow. Can't turn your camera on without permission, can't turn it off without permission. I mean, it just went on and on. And instead of this single babysitter, we got 2 or 3 babysitters because they were really scared of me because they knew that I'd had a lot of experience in war zones and I might trick them. And trick them we did. And within 2 or 3 days, we broke every single one of those restrictions. We filmed what was really going on. It was a war, and people were dying. And I snuck those tapes out of the country in my sock and brought them back to the United States. And NBC was very excited. And this was going to be the lead story on NBC News. And it was going to be the first real truth from the battlefield. And 2 hours before the broadcast, I was summoned into the office of the NBC president, and he said, "We're not going to show your tape, and you're never going to work here again," and fired me.
Bam!
And I went to CBS. CBS watched this material and said, "This is astonishing. People need to know about this. We're going to broadcast this. Thank you for bringing this to us." 2 o'clock in the morning, he got a phone call. He was fired.
Bam!
And everybody in television knew that you better not go near this footage. So we don't kill people in the United States like they do in other countries. But
has anyone seen this footage? Has this footage ever come out anywhere?
It was a big deal in Europe and in other places. Not here in the United States. The one country that really needed to see this because we were the ones who were prosecuting the war. And it was shown on PBS. Bill Moyer showed it in sort of as a hand-wringing expose of how the American press let us down during that war.
So that's how people at NBC News bring you the war coverage. They fire people who tell you the truth about war. And I don't know if you know, if you remember, during the second Iraq War, the second Gulf War, Brian Williams would bring on generals, retired generals, who were getting paid by defense contractors to advocate for certain specific weapon systems when they went on television. And they always advocated for more war and more weapon systems. But Brian Williams never told you that those generals he was bringing on to tell you the straight dope were actually being paid and they were propagandists for more war. He didn't tell you that. The guy who did tell you that won a Nobel Prize for it in the New York Times. Brian Williams still never informed his audience of that. Do you think anybody at NBC ever played this video? You think Chris Hayes or Rachel Maddow ever told their audience about this? Do you ever think they talked about Ashley Banfield who got fired from MSNBC for telling the truth about war? Or how about Jesse Ventura? How about when they fired Phil Donahue? And they said it was because he had low ratings. He was the highest rated show on the network at the time. And then it came out that a memo leaked that it was because he was telling the truth about the Iraq War. That's why we have a show. And that's why corporate news is garbage.
As a kid, I remember a skit from Saturday Night Live. I think it was TV Fun House. They did a skit where it was a cartoon, a short animation skit where they were calling out NBC as it was owned by General Electric and how it was also connected to building weapons for the military-industrial complex. I forget the name of the skit, but I think that was the last time said artist was ever allowed to be on Saturday Night Live when it used to be funny. I'm old enough to remember when Saturday Night Live used to be funny. My God, I think it's finally happened. But on top of that, you know, when I was doing my first tour in Iraq in the Green Zone, which is like where all the higher tier people were at, You know, you saw outlets like KBR and Blackwater at the time and all these other things. And when you saw reporters, they were being escorted and protected. And we were doing site security at the time. It's one big show. You don't want to show people what's going on. You show people a 2-minute clip, and then that's it. And that's how you sell war, and you make it entertaining for the American people.
You want to you want to see, kid? You want to see the kind of stories that actually did make the news back then?
Oh, I dread to see it.
Malcolm found this. This is former CBS with Dan Rather executive producer, and he later went on to become president of CBS News. This guy, his name is Jeff Fager, and he's been asking in an interview about, what do you remember about covering the Gulf War? And here's the kind of stories that did make the news. So the story of the dead citizens that we killed in Iraq, they got 2 people fired for just having the tape. This guy got promoted to be the head of the network. So let's see what kind of news reporting he did.
I did some in the Gulf War with Steve Croft for 60 Minutes. We did 2 stories. One was about the chemical suits the Americans were going to be using because everybody was afraid that Saddam would use chemical weapons in the battlefield.
So that's a good story because it shows that the guy we're going after is a monster who uses chemical weapons. And then we get to sell more of these suits, these chemical suits, to the military, and everybody will be happy. So that's a good story. Good story.
Ha.
Good story, Jeff. You did it.
I hated wearing those suits when we had to do training ops.
Oh, yeah?
I hated them.
Okay.
They always got so hot. I'm sorry.
And Saddam never did use chemicals on you?
Well, I mean, when I did my first tour, I mean, he was already arrested. You know, I didn't find out until when he passed away in 2007 during my second tour. Our staff sergeant, our platoon sergeant walked in and says, "Hey, Saddam Hussein is dead," and that was it. We all went right back to sleep, like whatever. I think he died by hanging, or I think that's what happened.
Yeah, they hanged him. So here's another story that this guy got on the air. So this guy, head of the CBS News. Let's see, what are the 2 stories he filed.
And another was about the Kuwaiti government in exile. And that was really interesting because they were in Saudi Arabia in a Sheraton hotel, literally, go to the 6th floor for the Ministry of Oil, which was interesting. I haven't seen that story. I have gone back and looked at a lot. I don't know whether that was any good, but I think it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Certainly more interesting than the stuff that got that guy fired. That was really interesting. Hey, there's some Kuwaiti officials in a Sheraton hotel in Saudi Arabia. Hey, you want to run that story or the one about how we're killing civilians in Iraq? I say I'm just going to flip a coin. Let's run with the Sheridan story and fire the guy who did the other one. I'm just flipping a coin. Wow. Okay. Anything? So what do you think? I mean, you're a veteran. What do you think? So what do soldiers think about the when you were in Iraq? Did you know it was all bullshit and there were no weapons of mass destruction and that you were being taken advantage of?
Well, in 2003, when they were telling the story to corporate media that, hey, there's WMDs there, that eventually, what was Rumsfeld said? Well, we thought there were WMDs, and then they were saying we're there to free the people from Saddam Hussein and do nation building. So 2004, obviously going 2005 was when I did my first tour. There were no WMDs. Everyone knew it.
So how does that affect you?
How's it to this day? I realized that I was part of something that was a horrible lie. So many people are forever affected and impacted. It's just not only here in America, but this is an international crisis because, again, the actions of the Bush-Cheney administration severely left a mark on international policy to where now there's ongoing war. And Barack Obama led us from 2 wars to 7 wars. There was no restriction. How did it affect me? I just know that from Iraq, there now is ongoing wars. There's open slave trade in Libya. There's ongoing interest in conflicts happening in Syria. There's an open genocide happening in Yemen. We have this ridiculous conflict that's happening in Ukraine. It's ongoing forever war. there's been no accountability. It's ever since 2001, since September 11th happened. Have the American people known a year of peace without war? Has the whole world known a year of peace? And the answer is a most definite no. We are stuck in war because of these sycophants in power in the Democratic and Republican Party who are owned by the military-industrial complex, Wall Street, and big oil. And there was a chance this could have been stopped. But people in power and those that were in the media that could have done something chose not to, and chose to go along with everything because they want to have access to the top 1%.
So when you're in a war, which is you were, and you know, why did you go back for a second tour? Did you not know it was a scam?
Well, here's the thing. When you enlist into the military, you sign a 4-year contract. So you just can't up and leave, because
right.
You're looking at jail time.
But you can't say, I don't want to go back?
I mean, if you did,
that'd be a problem.
That would be a severe problem.
So now you know, and you're being sent back, and everybody with you kind of knows too that this is bullshit.
Everyone knew. I mean, everyone just went along. I mean, the thing is, it's been ongoing. It's not only just in one part of the military, but everyone knew. And the thing is, the civilian people knew. If anything, from 2004, since 2001 up until 2008, I mean, the American people should have, in all reality, done something. The politicians should have done something. Our media should have done something. It's just not one group. Everyone knew, but no one chose not to because eventually a story like Afghanistan, WMDs in Iraq, passes away for celebrity gossip. And the tragedy that happened on 9/11, forgotten. The ongoing ridiculous wars happening. Just it was accepted as a normal. Nobody panicked. Remember that scene from the Joker in The Dark Knight where he had Harvey Dent gunpoint in the hospital bed. If I were to go to the press right now and tell that a gangbanger was going to die in the street or a truck's load of soldiers were going to blow up in some war overseas, nobody's going to panic. The American people didn't panic. Our media conditioned us to go along with it.
Yeah.
Our politicians conditioned us, Democrats and Republicans. So the only solution right now is to wake up, don't trust corporate media, and don't vote Democrat or Republican. You want to do something good now? I mean, we could go back in the past and say, what if? Don't support the Democratic Party. Don't support the Republican Party. Because look at the 20-plus years of damage that they've done to us. And if they can keep on doing it to us, they'll keep on screwing us over. Don't support the two-party system.
You, sir, sound like a white supremacist. Virginia Beach, Richmond, Arlington, San Jose, Miami, West Palm Beach. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets and become a premium member while you're there.